So I just watched a video from SciShow Psych, say that 5 times fast, about gaslighting. Now, if you're not familiar, you can watch that video because I'm not just going to spend a lot of this explaining what they already explained. Um, but one thing that that video did not talk about was, well, they kind of referred to multiple situations wherein, gaslighting could happen, relationships at work, or even friendships and stuff like that, but they didn't actually talk about when, the gaslighter is your parent. And the thing is about that is that it ends up fucking up more, I think. All gaslighting is bad and all of it will fuck you up. But, it ends up when you grow up with gaslighting, because the thing is that there's that key developmental um, psychological foundation and everything else, right? So the stuff you grow up with ends up shaping you for life. Now the thing is that there's neuroplasticity and you can change as a person, you can grow up. So don't be like, oh no, my childhood was crap. There's no hope for the future, because that's just not true. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Anyways, there is recovery. So you can, you aren't defined by your childhood. Don't worry. It's just that it is hard as fuck to unlearn shit from your childhood, is all. But also, if you don't go through therapy to undo that stuff, you will just keep on repeating patterns and patterns and not know why. In fact, I'm in a recovery program right now for my shitty childhood, and there's this quote that's oftentimes repeated, and that's from Carl Jung. And if you aren't familiar, everyone knows Freud, even though he's been completely debunked for everything he said, pretty much. But he was also working with this dude Jung. Now Jung is actually had a lot of similar types of ideas instead of actually making everything about sex. Kind of had more correct ideas about things. Now he wasn't 100% correct, but he was significantly more correct. Anyways, a quote of Jung's that is oftentimes touted in my program is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life, and you will call it fate." So now I might not be quoting exactly there because memory, but anyway, ironic that that's the sort of thing we're talking about. So it's sort of like, if you don't get the underlying psychological problems sorted, dealt with, then it will dictate your life. It will affect your choices. It will affect, just what happens in life. And you won't know why it's happening to you, and you'll think that the world hates you and that life hates you and you have the worst luck and all this other stuff. Like, why does this crap keep happening to me? Why do I keep on ending up in these bad relationships? Why do I keep on getting passed up for the jobs? Why do I keep on this, that, or the other thing? So, not realizing that it is actually, I don't want to be like, well, it's not the world, it's you. It's not necessarily you either. It's just, it was how you were raised, maybe. And also, there's the whole attachment theory thing. Whether or not you have secure attachment, or one of the insecure attachment types, because there's different attachment types, and that shit actually is pretty solidly developed and can't really be undone very well. You can work with it and or around it, but unfortunately, it's kind of set by the time you're a toddler. So, so there's the secure attachment types, and then attachment type, and then there's the preoccupied attachment type, and then there's the avoidant attachment type, and then most people will tell those three, but there's also the mixed, which some people disagree on whether or not it's an actual thing. I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I personally believe that the mixed is a thing. But anyways, in case you're not sure what so preoccupied is sort of like you are insecure about relationships, and you need to make sure you're always kind of like, I need to make sure that they care about me, that they love me, that this, that, the other thing. And whereas avoidant is kind of more like when you get where you tend to withdraw when you're not doing good and that sort of thing. And then the mixed is sort of, I really, really want and I'm really insecure, and I really, really want the sort of attention and love and everything else, but I'm afraid of it. So I end up withdrawing. So it tends to happen in people who dealt with a lot of abuse. So that neglect causes unstable parenting. So flip flopping between being like super good parent or super even overdoing it with the parenting, and like neglect is what causes the preoccupied, and then neglect is what causes the avoidant, and then the mixed is oftentimes a result of abuse because they want their caregiver, because all infants do, but the thing is that they've learned that their caregiver isn't always an object of comfort. Anyways, so so all of this is kind of just to preface the whole why gaslighting so young is so impactful. Because if you grew up and had this sort of development while your mind is kind of developing, while you're becoming a person, and by the way, this is also why sexual violence as a child is so much more insidious than sexual violence as a teenager, or not, well, even a teenager, that's pretty fucked up, but like why sexual violence as an adult isn't quite as bad. It's still terrible, to be sure, but not quite as bad as rather that it's just worse when it's a child. Like, if you have experienced, don't go up to sexual violence. People who experience sexual violence as an adult and say, well, at least you didn't get it as a kid. Like, don't do that. Please do not do that. It's still terrible. Like, there's just because it's worse doesn't mean that the first one isn't bad. So, anyways, because the thing is that that sort of all the negative feelings that sexual violence creates is kind of getting imprinted on your early developmental self, your idea of yourself, because that's when you are developing your ideas of the world and yourself. So if you experience something extremely that is extremely damaging to your sense of self, so gaslighting or sexual violence, the feelings of disgust and low self-worth, that's why that's insidious there. But with gaslighting, the sort of like, I can't trust myself, I can't trust my perception of reality, I can't trust my memories or anything like that, then you end up kind of having that really ingrained into your psyche, because you end up believing, sorry, and I've got a bit of a cold, so I know that's probably super great for colds, but let me live. So that ends up being ingrained into your psyche of that my perception of reality is faulty. And no matter how much you try to unlearn that, there's always going to be that part of you that believes that, because especially if it happened to you from a parent, because to children, parents are everything. Their parents mean the world to them. So even if the kids, like, so parents, even if your kid is saying, I hate you and everything else, they don't fully understand what they're saying. Okay, kids, like, they go to their parents for everything in terms of emotional, psychological, not just physical, okay? So the way that the sort of treatment they get from the parents, and by the way, I'm not just talking about I'm talking about like their primary caregiver, okay? So it doesn't actually technically have to be their parent. So like if say they're being raised by their uncle or something, their primary caregiver is who they, during those childhood years, who they need that whatever from the most. So if that primary caregiver, that authority figure on their life, is telling them that they can't trust their perception of reality, they're gonna believe it, because the thing is that kids believe things because they are just insatiably curious about the world, and they have no reason not to trust people, especially not their parents, because they or caregiver, because that primary caregiver is supposed to have their best interests at heart. They're supposed to trust them, so they're gonna believe everything that their parent says. So if their parent is teaching them something that is actually quite harmful, then they're not going to know the difference, because they're young, they're naive. That's kind of the innocence of childhood, So they haven't been, they haven't been made wise to the world, because the thing is that wisdom is almost a result of bad experience. You learn not to do certain things because of the bad experience with them last time, or you learn that certain things will have certain effects, or you learn, the wisest people have been through the most crap, right? So it's sort of shit like that. But children hopefully haven't been through crap like that. So they're trusting. They're not wise, they're naive because they haven't gotten that negative experience to teach them otherwise. And so if you have a parent that's teaching them something so bad about themselves, then they're just going to carry that with them throughout their lives. And they're going to have to spend so much time and energy trying to unlearn that. Like, for example, like I'm in a mental health program, as I've mentioned already, and I've been in this mental health program for like a year and a half, okay? And I'll probably be in this mental health program for a while longer. And I've taken various, mental health things before that too. And a lot of people are like, well, shouldn't you be better than by now? And even me, I was saying that to myself at first, like, oh, why is it taking me so long to get better? I know these things, but it's just not, I'm still having those times when I'm not believing it. I'm not, like, it's still affecting me. And the thing that helped me most was when, I can't remember if I realized this myself or someone else told me this, was the sort of, I guess, realization that the damage happened over such a long period of time for it to properly take root and for it to properly, take effect. The recovery also has to take place over a long period of time, especially because it was that developmental trauma, So, and also a big thing is like having to cut out the one who's gaslighting you, because every single time, because I'm in the process of cutting my mother out of my life now, and it's just such a headache. Oh my god. Anyways, and a lot of people are thinking that, how could you do that? She's your mom, blah blah blah. And I'm like, that woman has done so much terrible things to me, and I'm in a recovery program. I'm trying to get better so that I can actually make something of my life. I've been unemployed for 3 years because of how bad my mental health has been. I've burnt out 4 times in a row, like 4 successive burnouts. I didn't even recover from the previous one before I had another one. I was on welfare, and I'm on disability support, and my health is just fucking tanking because, by the way, stress causes health problems. I need to recover in order for me to actually be a person almost. So now I'm a person now, to feel like a person, And the thing is that I would start to improve, and then I'd go visit my mother or talk to my mother, and then I'd be right back where I started. And then I'd start, well, maybe not right back where I started, but I would just, for like weeks afterwards, I'd be super low. And it was constantly doing this, because she knew all the ways to push my buttons and to get under my skin and all this other stuff. So this message is out to you. If you have a parent who treats you like crap, don't feel bad about cutting them out. If you have an old friend, but I've been friends with so don't be afraid to cut them out. Do this to anyone, any family member, any person in your life who treats you like crap. If you are able to cut them out, because I know that's not a possibility for everyone. If you're young, like if you're realizing this, like say at like 15, and you can't move out and whenever, you're stuck for a couple more years. But if you are able to cut this person out of your life who is making you miserable, do it. Because the longer that they are in your life, the more damage that they're going to cause. So, the sooner you do it, the sooner you can start actually properly recovering. Because, otherwise, you're just going to keep on trying and failing, which is only going to make you feel worse, and is only going to negatively impact your recovery, and to make it take longer, which is only going to make you feel, etc., vicious cycle, and everything else. You need to make progress properly. And to do that, it's kind of like if you have, a sword in you, and you go to the hospital with a sword in you, because you just fucking life advice, if you have something in you, like you got stabbed with something, don't take it out, let the doctors do it, because anyways. But you go to the hospital like you're supposed to, you have this sword sticking out of your fucking chest. And the doctors are like, okay, we're just going to stitch up around the sword. We're not going to take the sword out. We're just going to leave it in. You're not going to heal because there's still a sword in you. And every single time you move, it's going to reopen the wound. If it gets banged against something, it's going to reopen the wound. Anything that they did stitch up, it's going to get pulled right open again, or damaged more, or cut more. And also, it can't heal when there's a sword there, you know? So you have to, like with the doctors who know what to do. So don't. Also, that's another thing. Don't try to. It's metaphor really works actually. So don't try to take it out yourself, because you know you don't know what you're doing as much. You need to have these extra tools. You need to have other people help you with things. And you need to have safeguards in place so that if something, while you're vulnerable, like having a gaping wound in your chest, you don't spill out everywhere. So you need to have the doctors do it properly, where they have you on blood transfusions already so you're not bleeding out, and then they can stitch you up right away properly, and then have it actually closed. And it'll take a while to recover. It took so much shorter to get the wound, but than it will to heal up that wound. You'll always have a scar, and in fact, depending on where it was, you may always have a part of you that doesn't work right. Like, say if you got stabbed in the shoulder, which I hate that in movies, how they always have people stabbed or shot in the shoulder and then their arm works fine afterwards. Anyways, if you hit, the muscles or the tendons or something like that, or even the bone wrong, your arm may never work right again. And you always have that scar in your shoulder. But it's better than having that sword there, and it's better than dying. So it is important to recover. It's funny, I was gonna make this video talking about, like, oh, this is why people end up staying in abusive relationships and whatever, because especially if they had gaslighting growing up, then they don't have that sort of trust of themselves, because that's why I started talking about the Carl Jung quote. This totally went in a different direction, but I think it was a good direction all the same. But anyways, this is a long ass video talking about some heavy shit, so now I'm just gonna end this with, I'm no expert. This is just from, accumulation of stuff that I've been told by experts and stuff that's helped me in my recovery journey. Because I know a lot of people can't afford recovery, because unfortunately mental health isn't prioritized the way that other types of health are, and in, one major country, America, anyways, it's like all health is expensive, right? But even in other countries that have universal healthcare, like Canada, for example, psychiatrists are covered, and that's about it. So you can get your medication, you can't get your therapy. In fact, I'm at the YMCA, and that's why I'm getting mental health services, because I'm in a mental health program at the YMCA. So, and that was after a stint of homelessness. So, yeah, that's how desperate I ended up getting. So, yeah. So maybe this can help you. Maybe it doesn't. If it can't, I'm like, whatever. Or maybe this will just help you get perspective. Or if it doesn't, I'm one person, But if it helps even one person, or if it helps one person gain perspective on the issue, so that they can even just, be a better person to other people, then hey, at least I'm doing something right. Thanks for watching.